Hello everyone, welcome to another amazing video. If you enjoy the content, I ask that you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the upcoming parts and new videos. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's video. Are you ready? Let's go.
The story begins with the protagonist running across the snow, wondering what life is. At that moment, an arrow comes towards him while he keeps running at full speed, and the arrow hits him squarely in his heel. The protagonist starts to say that life is like an egg, as he begins to fall from the impact of the arrow on his heel. He then falls to the ground. After all, it was not possible to dodge that arrow. The protagonist then looks back. His enemy had caught up with him, placing his long sword towards his neck. The enemy's gaze was sinister, and it was clear that he was not kidding around. The enemy then asks his partners to search the protagonist. One of the enemies says that he found a relic while searching the protagonist's body. It was a beautiful cup with several shiny stones in it. After that, the enemy with his long sword prepares to deliver the final blow to the protagonist. Blood was sprayed everywhere. The protagonist only says that he was killed just like in a game. A voice starts to ask the protagonist to kill everyone there. The protagonist just says, "Don't get angry, hand of corruption." At the same moment, the hand of corruption starts to move towards the already decapitated body of the protagonist, while the protagonist says that it was necessary to die once anyway. The hand of corruption then grabs his body while continuing to say, "Kill." The hand of corruption then possesses the body and starts to walk towards the protagonist's head, saying the words, "Murderer, murderer." The protagonist starts to say that if it's about the divinity within the relic, then she could be at ease. The body then picks up the head from the ground, while the protagonist smiles, saying that he had already collected the divinity within that relic. The body then fits the head back onto the neck, while the protagonist says that there was no need to have useless people following him all the time. The head then starts to reconnect with the body, while the hand of corruption still continues to pronounce, "Kill, kill." The protagonist then smiles sheepishly, saying that, despite everything, he ended up losing all the money. The protagonist then begins to tell his story. He was approaching 30 years old. He lived tired and too busy to play. For this reason, he lived by cheating in games, since that was not possible in real life. He didn't even remember the name of the game or why he had bought it. He just kept playing. He continued living the game as the powerful priest of corruption. He played frantically while explaining what a priest of corruption was. Basically, it was the hardest class to progress, the hardest to play, and to make matters worse, the class with the worst performance in the game. The protagonist then smiles and explains that, despite all this, his heart always raced when he played that game. He reached a point where all the class's progression resources had already been obtained by him. All the class's missions had already been completed. At that moment, the screen of his computer began to glow very brightly. The protagonist didn't understand what was happening. He began to be sucked into the game by that green energy, thus becoming the priest of corruption within the game. With him was his hand of corruption, which lived by pronouncing the words, "Kill, kill, kill." He then smiles, explaining that that hand lives screaming as if it were a rock singer. But that hand is the goddess whom the protagonist serves. Her name is Mother of Corruption. He explains that it all started 5 years ago when he began to serve the Mother of Corruption. This was right when he was sucked into the game by the computer. When he awoke shortly after being sucked into the game, all he had at that moment was a robe of the Order of Corruption, and the hand of the Mother of Corruption was extended on his chest. And because of that huge presence that the hand had, the protagonist could easily accept that it was true, that he had been sucked into the game. He then, quite concerned about the situation, begins to remember that, according to the description of the Priest of Corruption class, he is a human genetically modified by drugs, and because of that, he had enhanced physical abilities. All his senses were sharpened, and besides all that, his body can only be killed by a deity. He begins to think that despite all that, there might be something wrong with his head too, like, for example, he couldn't stand seeing blood, like a bear devouring a human near him. He explains that the macabre scenes don't really affect him, like that of the bear devouring a person. The problem was that his current body was not capable of feeling anything at all, not even the taste of things. This made him sad, since he loved the flavor of food. He then goes to a guild and, already talking to the attendant, asks if there is any work he can take on. The girl then asks him to wait a moment while she checks the archives. She says she will find a mission compatible with a priest who serves the goddess of preservation, just like him. The protagonist then becomes happy while waiting for her to find some work. He then begins to explain that inside that place, after entering the city of Guise, he decided to pretend to be a member of the Order of Preservation. Because if he were from a different order, the moment he pretended to be a member of another order, his god would have been angry with him and would have marked him. This mark only members of that specific order can see. It would be a seal of punishment. But in the case of the Mother of Corruption, she is benevolent when it comes to disguises like that. The Order of Corruption has as an enemy all the others, and the protagonist, who was hated by everyone, was the only follower of the Mother of Corruption. The girl from the guild, after some time looking for work, manages to find an ideal job for Priest Marnak. But Marnak is not pleased to see the description of the work, while the girl just says that she is happy to work with him. The priest explains that most mercenaries just ask him to translate the writings for them. Marnak then smiles worriedly, since that's not such a cool skill. Since the moment he was teleported into the game, he was already able to read and write all the languages of that world. Marnak then places the sheet about the mission and asks if by any chance he could receive part of the reward right then and there. He says this with a worried face. The girl from the guild just says, "Sorry? What do you mean?" After all, he wanted to receive the reward before even completing the work described on the paper. He then sets off on a journey with other people. Meanwhile, he remembers how long the conversation with the girl from the guild was, and explains to the Mother of Corruption that the girl liked to talk a lot, while the Mother of Corruption only knew how to say kill. Marnak then gets nervous, saying that he didn't fall in love with her. No, he says this while squeezing the hand of corruption. He also says that if she keeps insinuating that, he will be very sad with her. During the mission's journey, a young man approaches calling Priest Marnak. This young man calls the priest to talk, saying that he is sure that the priest came from another city, and if he would mind talking about where he came from. Priest Marnak then turns with a suspicious look, while the blonde-haired young man continues saying that if they continue on that path, they will reach his village, and that he wishes to find his father and mother there. Marnak just listens to all that, and wonders if that man's name was Pierre. Then Pierre continues saying that he is sure that his parents will withstand the cold winter, thanks to Captain Galad, who makes generous donations to Pierre's parents. He still wonders why he worries like that. He continues saying if the priest is aware that there are rumors that those who are kidnapping the farmers are not people or even monsters, they say they are ghosts. Priest Marnak, already annoyed, can only think that that man talks too much. The captain then of the caravan shouts the name of Pierre. Pierre then immediately runs off, saying he needs to move forward, but that he will soon return to continue talking with Marnak. The priest becomes worried upon hearing this. Once again, the Hand of Corruption asks to kill. Marnak asks why she keeps asking to kill everyone, because if everyone there dies, it's going to become a big problem for him. He then, with an evil look, says that on the whole way back to the city of Guise, the Hand of Corruption did not speak, and that now the priest is desperately in need of 20 silver coins. All he wants is to spend this winter in warmth. He thanks after saying all this with a tone of anger. The Hand of Corruption says kill once more, but recoils a bit in fear of that expression of Marnak. The priest then smiles as he observes the Hand of Corruption. He then apologizes, since apparently he was too aggressive with her, and says that she doesn't need to be sad in that way. The Mother of Corruption then opens her hand, saying to kill. Priest Marnak takes advantage of the situation to ask the Hand of Corruption how many fingers she would rate the caravan captain and Pierre. The Hand of Corruption then points, saying that Pierre is worth 1 finger and the captain is worth 2 fingers. Marnak then says that apparently both have nothing special. Priest Marnak then, with a scary expression, says that if he killed them all and sent them to the Mother of Corruption, he would be able to receive divinity according to the number of fingers rated by her. Marnak further explains that 1 finger is worth 10 of divinity, 2 fingers are worth 100 of divinity, 3 fingers are worth 1,000 of divinity, 4 fingers are worth 10,000 of divinity, and 5 fingers are worth 100,000 of divinity. He further explains that if he happens to collect 10,000 of divinity, he will be able to receive an authority, since, thanks to the system, he was able to absorb the divinity that was in the sacred relic and thus obtain authority. He further explains that currently there are 12 relics. While the captain is arguing with Pierre, the priest continues explaining that the Mother of Corruption informed him that if he were able to take the divinity of all 12 relics, all the priest's wishes would be fulfilled. Marnak then, excited, already imagines that the first thing he will ask for will be to recover his sense of taste so that he can feel the taste of food again. At that moment, the priest hears someone talking to him again, saying that the captain asked not to disturb him so much. It was a downcast Pierre saying that the captain ordered him to stop talking so much, otherwise he would irritate him. The priest then smiles and says that it's all okay. He still, with his eyes closed, tells Pierre not to worry about it. The priest then opens his eyes and is faced with countless arrows flying towards everyone in the caravan. The two are confused about what was happening. Priest Marnak then grabs Pierre's clothes and throws him away from that place, while there were 2 arrows heading towards the priest, which hit him squarely in his body. He then falls to the ground wounded, while Pierre screams desperately asking if he is okay. The archers who attacked the caravan then stand up from where they were hiding. The priest remains lying on the ground, still injured by the arrows. At that moment, all that the Hand of Corruption asks for is to kill them all. Priest Marnak wonders if those 2 archers are bandits. Once again, the Hand of Corruption orders to kill them all. Marnak says that the Hand of Corruption wants him to pretend to be dead, to collect the divinity of the archers as soon as he has an opportunity. Marnak then observes all the members of the caravan dead on the ground because of the arrows. He says that pretending to be dead and catching the archers off guard would be too easy. He then begins to stand up, telling the Mother of Corruption that she knows him and knows that he doesn't like to play it easy. After finally standing up, he looks at a sword that was a few meters away from him. He then picks up the sword and positions himself for battle, saying that he likes to do things that way. He then charges at the archers with a look full of confidence. One of the archers is worried about what was happening, since he saw that he hit the arrows on the priest, and yet he was standing up attacking him. The priest then delivers a fatal blow to the archer, decapitating him on the spot. The other enemies are worried when they see that scene. One of them is extremely worried about it, saying that it was crap that it was happening. That enemy then orders the rest of the group to let him deal with the priest, and that after that the rest of the group can go ahead to help deal with the rest of the caravan. Marnak instinctively looks to the side, already blocking the attack of the enemy who tried to catch him by surprise. The enemy is smiling with extreme confidence while Priest Marnak is super calm. Marnak then reverses the attack against the enemy's sword, throwing him far away with great force. He then asks the Mother of Corruption to evaluate how many fingers that enemy would be worth in divinity. The enemy hears this and becomes furious, asking what the hell he was talking about. The enemy then attacks the priest with everything, causing a huge explosion between the swords. The battle continues frenetically, the enemy managing to deliver numerous simultaneous blows while the priest defends himself from all of them. During the battle, the Mother of Corruption finishes her evaluation, saying that that enemy would be worth 2.5 fingers in divinity. The priest then remembers the person who cut his throat in the past, saying that that bandit was on the same level as that ranger who had cut his throat. He gives a worried smile, saying that this game was too unbalanced. The enemy then runs with everything towards the priest to try to finish him off. The priest even manages to block the blow, but his sword breaks in the middle, flying away from him. The enemy makes a macabre face and fills with laughter at the situation the priest was in, since his sword was broken. Marnak then looks at what was left of the sword with a worried expression and says that's why he likes to use stainless steel. He says that the weapon he found in battle was trash. The enemy then, looking at the priest, says that since he doesn't know anything in particular about him, the enemy will leave him alone. Priest Marnak is confused to hear that. The enemy then, full of confidence, explains that his group was planning to do their last job and then they would leave that place. The priest then throws the piece of the sword on the ground and starts to tell the bandit that, since both are smiling, why not finish the matter right there? Marnak then makes a counteroffer, telling the enemy to stop being a bandit and to leave that place immediately. The enemy just can't believe what he was hearing. The priest then smiles again, mocking the enemy, that if he does everything the priest is asking, he will go easy on the enemy. The enemy then gets stressed and asks if the priest was really serious. Did he really think they would say, "All right, pick up their things and leave"? The priest says that wasn't quite it, but after saying that and because of his distraction, he takes an arrow to the head. The enemy with the sword smiles worriedly at the archer's delay, since for a second he thought the priest was going to be able to kill him. The archer then asks him to stop the drama, since everyone there saw that he managed to cut the priest's sword in half. The enemy with the sword then explains that he calculated precisely where he should attack him to cut him in half. Another member of the bandits says that he got the situation, that he is awesome. The swordsman then asks if they have already killed everyone from that caravan. One of the members replies that yes, they made sure to kill each one of them. The priest, upon hearing that, screams, "Did you really kill everyone?" All the bandits are terrified because the priest is still alive. Marnak then starts to stand up. The swordsman, worried about the bandits' reaction and, by the way, until then had not seen the priest stand up, asks why everyone was surprised. The bandits reply that one person survived, and just the person who took an arrow to the head. Marnak then, with a terrifying look, breaks the arrow that was in his head and asks the bandits if it's the first time they've witnessed something like that. Everyone is completely terrified, saying that they have never in their lives heard of someone standing up after taking an arrow to the head. Priest Marnak then crosses his hands, saying that he has already given a chance to all the bandits. And with a terrifying expression, he tells the swordsman that he already got the answer after taking the arrow to the head from the other bandits. The swordsman is completely terrified by the expression of the priest and shouts for the archers to shoot immediately at the priest. At that moment, the priest is gathering an absurd amount of power. All the archers begin to shoot arrows non-stop towards the priest, but without success. Priest Marnak then, while gathering powers, begins to pray to the hand of corruption, telling her that her son is in danger, and that, although he is surprised, he is also scared, not knowing what to do, and if by chance she is beside him watching. While he was pronouncing this prayer, the bandits couldn't believe what they were witnessing. All they could say was that the priest looked like a monster at that moment. Marnak continues his prayer, asking the mother of corruption if that moment was not appropriate for her to help. All the bandits start to run completely desperate. After the bandits run a bit, they are stopped from continuing by an invisible barrier. They begin to punch it, trying to get through, but realize that they are all trapped inside. Priest Marnak then, finishing, continues his prayer, saying that this is the line where the living cannot pass. All that barrier is an authority that the priest of corruption must activate before he can unleash his enormous power. This prevents enemies from fleeing and hiding from the divinity of corruption. The bandits despair, trying to escape from there without success. Marnak, still reciting his prayer, smiles and makes a bizarre face, saying how much he loves that authority. The swordsman, seeing that he would not succeed in escaping from there, says that they have no choice and asks for everyone to draw their swords. He begins to say that if they can somehow get through that barrier, before finishing his sentence, he takes a powerful blow that crushes him to the ground. All the bandits are in shock, screaming for the name of the swordsman. At that moment, there was a huge monster in front of them inside the barrier. The bandits couldn't believe the huge arm that monster had. With one punch, it was able to completely crush the swordsman, causing huge damage to the ground. They were in front of a completely terrifying monster. All the bandits were paralyzed with fear. The monster then lets out a huge roar, leaving everyone even more scared. Everyone starts screaming in despair as the monster approaches them. The only thing the bandits could do at that moment was cry and beg for help. They could only ask the priest to let them live, and that they would stop being bandits. The priest is filled with joy to see everyone's despair. He then orders the monster, saying that apart from taking their heads, he could do whatever he wanted with the rest of the body. After that order, the monster devours all the bandits. It was possible to see blood spraying everywhere. After that, Marnak starts walking towards his caravan that was attacked. It was a scene of terror. Everyone around him was dead. The priest then asks the mother of corruption if she wants him to collect the divinities of those bodies. He asks if he collects the divinities of those bodies, they will disappear, won't they? He asks the mother of corruption. He also says that if he says that, the guild will probably investigate and will imagine that something happened. The priest then hears someone moaning beside him. It was Pierre, who was extremely wounded by the arrows, despite still being alive. Priest Marnak is somewhat pleased to see him in that situation and says he will end this so that he can rest in peace, that the priest will do his best to be able to save Pierre, and that will surely help his reputation. Meanwhile, the hand of corruption keeps saying, "Kill, kill, kill." The priest then approaches Pierre and asks the mother of corruption to help him achieve his goal of improving his reputation by saving him. He then asks her to heal Pierre's wounds. Now we move to another place in that world. A woman holds the relic and asks the bishop what happened to the individual who stole that relic. The bishop then answers that he heard that this individual was beheaded right there on the spot. The girl then asks what they did with the body after they beheaded him. The bishop replies that there were no supplies with him, so all that was left to do was to leave the body thrown in the snow, and they returned only with the relic in hand. The girl, who was a priestess, then starts to leave that place. The bishop asks what she plans to do. She then leaves the relic on the table and tells him that he can go back from there. From that moment on, she would embark on a pilgrimage journey. The bishop is surprised by this and asks why she decided to go on a pilgrimage so suddenly. Right after asking this, he himself answers, saying that by chance the reason for that pilgrimage would be because of the prophecy. The priestess then answers that yes, she will make this journey because of the prophecy, but also because there is a certain individual she needs to find. The scene now returns to someone walking on the snow. It was Priest Marnak carrying Pierre on his back. As they approach the village, the guards spot the situation of the two and are surprised. They run to meet the priest to help him carry Pierre. At that moment, someone shouts Marnak's name. He looks to the side, surprised to see someone calling him. It was a smiling girl, saying that she had already received permission from the guards. At that moment, the guards continue carrying the heavy body of Pierre, and wonder how the priest managed to carry someone so heavy alone for so many kilometers. Already passing through the walls, the girl tells the priest that if it were just for his appearance, she would never imagine how strong he was, and apparently, he is much stronger than he seems. Priest Marnak, embarrassed, says that he is a little bit strong in a way. The priest then looks intently at the girl, while she continues to say that despite all that, she observed that he was carrying several heads in a bag, and that from what she heard, they were the source of all the problems during the caravan. She then asks for the bag, saying that it was not nice to carry it around everywhere, that it would be more interesting to take it directly to the guild, and that she could do that for him. The priest then hands the bag to her. He then asks if there is any place for him to sleep, if there wouldn't be any vacant room for him in that huge city since he was planning to look for one at that moment. She is surprised to see that he doesn't have a place to stay. She then brings her finger to her mouth and tells the priest if it's okay for him. At that moment, the mother of corruption, jealous, only knows how to say kill. The girl, with her face all red with embarrassment, asks if he would like to sleep at her house. The priest is extremely embarrassed, becoming speechless. Meanwhile, the mother of corruption wouldn't stop ordering to kill the girl. It was kill here and kill there. The jealousy of the mother of corruption overflowed from so much kill, she said. The priest, already lying in bed, holds the mother of corruption, saying that he was already aware. He says that he was aware of her intentions, and that's why he accepted. He also reassures the mother of corruption, saying that he has no perverse intentions with that red-haired girl. He then starts to reminisce about the moment when she, all embarrassed, asked him to sleep at her house. The priest says that he already knew that all the girl wanted to say was that he should go sleep in the guest room of the guild. At that moment, someone knocks on the door. Marnak looks wondering who it could be. It was the red-haired girl opening the door and saying hi to him. She also says that she would like him to rest as much as he wants, but at that moment, there is something he would need to pay attention to. He replies that there is no problem at all and starts to get up from bed. Marnak then asks what the problem would be. She, smiling, informs that the lord of the city wishes to see him. At that moment, the mother of corruption is filled with anger seeing the two of them talking. Priest Marnak, surprised, asks if the lord really wants to see him. He also asks if she would know why he was calling him. She just makes a worried expression and responds that Captain Galad, the leader of the mercenary group who died in battle, was actually the half-brother of the lord. Priest Marnak then heads towards the lord's mansion. Upon arriving there, one of the butlers informs the lord that the priest had arrived. The lord just orders the butler to leave there to talk alone with the priest. The butler just responds, "Yes, my lord," and leaves. The lord then, named Filion, fixes his gaze on Priest Marnak. He then asks the priest if he was the one who saw the last moments of Captain Galad, who in this case was the half-brother of the lord. The priest is surprised to be present there with the city's lord. The lord then asks the priest if he would like to have some tea. Marnak smiles upon hearing this, and starts to think that the moment the mother of corruption saw the lord for the first time, she automatically drew an X. The priest, with a terrifying expression, starts to think about how the life of the lord was going pretending to be a human, when in fact the lord was a demon, thought the priest, since while the mother of corruption was hidden inside the priest's pocket, she marked him with an X, and there is only one reason for her to have drawn a big X on the lord as soon as she saw him. It's simply because he is not a human. And to help, among all beings, there is only one that can take the form of a human. Only demons have that power. He also explains that demons are beings stronger than any other existence. Many of these demons are incapable of doing anything on their own. So, for them to become part of the world, they feel forced to make a deal with the existences of that world. That's why demons love all human beings. After all, among the gods and demons, the gods deeply hate the demons, who are as evil as tyrants. The gods came to a point of declaring to all their human followers that, from that point on, all those beings would be called demons. And not only that, but these beings are all malevolent. After that, the hunt for demons by the priests began. All those who were considered demons were hung upside down on a trunk and were killed by arrows. The priest then recalls that the contractors of demons were a difficult class, and people avoided playing with it. He remembered that this class of demon contractor was the second class that the priest used to play before being pulled into that world. The lord is a little silent while Marnak waited for him to say something. The priest then smiles, saying that he is impressed, that thanks to his late brother Galad, the Lord was able to be in the presence of a very important guest. The Lord then places his teacup on the table, while saying to the priest that he was able to see through his disguise, and because of that, the Lord did not believe that the priest was simply from the order of the goddess of preservation. The Lord then interlaces his fingers while giving a devilish smile and asks Marnak to call him Sneaky Crawler at that moment. The priest then smiles and introduces himself, saying that he is a priest serving the mother of corruption, and that the Lord could call him Marnak. The Lord then is surprised, saying that he thought the group of priests who followed the mother of corruption had been decimated, and that it was to think that he was in front of a living son of the mother of corruption. The Lord then pleads for the priest to sit down. After all, they were the only ones inside the room, so there was no need for formalities. The priest then accepts his request and sits down. The Lord then begins to say that, to be honest, he had not called the priest there for any special reason. Marnak is confused to hear this. The Lord then continues, asking about his brother Galad, who was the captain of that caravan in which the priest was. The Lord asks how exactly his brother Galad died. At the moment, the priest looks intently, not knowing what to answer, but at that moment the Lord informed that he will ensure that Marnak receives appropriate payment for his efforts. Priest Marnak then smiles upon hearing that and says that it's all right. He will tell what happened. Still in the mansion, the priest told everything that happened to the Lord. After telling everything, the priest begins to think that it was a very unfortunate event. After all, during the whole winter, Captain Galad was complaining a lot about being without work to do. Because of this, the Lord tried to give him a job under the table so that he could relax a little. Who would imagine that the Lord's brother would die in the process, thought Marnak. He then observes the face of the Lord and says that this thing called life is quite difficult. Marnak then leaves the mansion with a small bag of gold, while the mother of corruption orders to kill him, as if the Lord had dirty intentions giving that gold. Priest Marnak asks her to calm down, since the Lord did not provoke him using that money. After all, the Lord only made that payment because he wanted to know the truth about how his brother Galad died. Marnak also explains that he's not a priest who is so greedy for gold, even though he likes it a lot. Marnak also tells a curiosity to the mother of corruption, asking her if she knew that gold does not rust. Marnak then takes the hand of corruption and asks her, please, to listen carefully to what he has to say before she gets angry. He also emphasizes that it is important for her to listen to the end. Marnak then prepares to begin his speech, while the mother of corruption is completely puzzled. Marnak begins to explain, saying that there is something that does not rust and lasts as long as gold. He asks the mother of corruption if she can guess what it is. Marnak then smiles, saying that it is his love for her. The mother of corruption starts to tremble, ashamed of what Marnak just said. The mother of corruption then starts saying, "Kill, kill, kill," which is the only word she can say. Marnak then brings the mother of corruption to his chest, leaving the hand of corruption even more ashamed. Marnak still happily says that for him, she will always be the most important thing in that world. He then begins to walk, telling her that this is why she doesn't need to worry about anything. Some time passes, and Marnak returns to the guild. There, he meets the redhead girl who greets him, asking if he is back already. She then asks if Marnak would not like to greet the priests of the teaching sect who were right next to them. Marnak turns around and begins to think that he does not want to talk to the crazy people of the teaching sect, at least not at that moment. However, upon looking at them, Marnak's eye turns green, as if the mother of corruption is contacting him. Marnak then looks at all the members of that sect, including one of them who is looking back. Marnak then becomes worried, as the mother of corruption was saying something to him. Marnak then puts his hand on his chest, while the mother of corruption says that one of those sect members is in possession of a sacred relic. One of the sect members then starts walking towards Marnak, saying the words, "Dedication of a lifetime of law." Marnak begins to look worried, as he never imagined that there would be a preservation priest in that guild. That member then introduces himself, saying that he is the weight on the scale of retribution, and that his name was Orvis. He then smiles and says that the big guy who is his partner is named Cornu, and that the girl next to him is named Patina. Marnak then puts his hand to his chest, bows, and says that it is a pleasure to meet all of them, that he is a priest who serves the goddess of preservation, and his name is Marnak. The girl with the red hair says that it is nice that the priests of the education sect are there, just as the priest is. The priest is then relieved, thinking that even if not at that moment, he will have the chance to steal the sacred relic from those people. His eye even shines with the power of the mother of corruption. Marnak begins to think that there is only one problem in all of this. When he absorbs a divinity from the relic, some divinity of corruption is bound to leak. He even remembers when he was plundered and had his head cut off. He even thought if he should steal the relic again, and who knows, instead of being called a priest of corruption, he would not be a bandit of corruption, joked Marnak. At that moment, Orvis extends his hand, saying that they need to greet Lord Phil urgently. He also says that they can talk for real once they meet again. The 3 sect members then walk to the guild's exit, while Marnak wonders if they are really going to greet Lord Phil. The girl with the red hair then tells Marnak that the guild usually provides shelter for priests at a low price. Marnak then becomes worried and asks if this means she will charge him for sleeping there last night. The girl laughs and asks Marnak if he really thought she let him sleep there because she was interested in him. She only allowed it because he is also a priest. Marnak becomes embarrassed, saying that it wasn't like that at all, that he would never think such a thing. However, the girl with the red hair looks embarrassed and says that she also had her own intentions in helping him. Marnak becomes even more embarrassed, asking what that meant. The girl then stretches out her hand, saying that, if possible to prevent the food from spoiling, the priest couldn't cast a preservation blessing on it. She says this very close to Marnak's face, all embarrassed. Marnak backs away completely embarrassed and starts shouting because she was whispering in his ear. The girl with the red hair then smiles and begins to wonder why she did that. At that moment, someone approaches and says, "That's nice. Looks like you two get along." Marnak turns around asking who said that. Upon seeing who it was, Marnak asks if that person didn't go with the members to visit the Lord. It was Cornu who had returned to the guild. Cornu then said that he didn't have much to do because of his people. Many lords of the north don't have a good impression of Cornu's appearance, as he had a huge horn on his forehead. Cornu then explains that he only paid his respects to the Lord and then returned to the guild, letting the other 2 go their own ways. A voice says that they don't think the Lord would care about that kind of thing, which catches the attention of Marnak and Cornu. It was the girl with the red hair who also pointed out that the Lord may seem cold at times, but he is very good as a leader. She then begins to remember Lord Phil and says that he knows perfectly well how to separate his work from his personal life, and he has many people who support him within the city of Geese. So the girl suggests that Cornu avoid speaking ill of the Lord in that way. Cornu then responds that he will reflect on that. Cornu, still taking advantage of being in the guild, asks the girl to tell them more about the Lord. After all the conversation, Cornu becomes interested in everything he heard. The girl with the red hair, always very charismatic, telling her stories, and Marnak kept listening to everything without revealing that he knew the truth about the Lord. The 3 had been talking for a long time, until Marnak smiles and says he has a question for Cornu. He then asks why the 3 decided to visit the Lord out of nowhere. Cornu is surprised by the question, but he smiles and says that they are actually following a prophecy they received 10 years ago. He also explains that the priest Orvis thought that the end of the world was hidden in the shell of life, meaning it was a demon. Marnak becomes worried and asks if they are there because they think the Lord is a demon. Cornu chuckles and says he doesn't believe that, and that the priest Orvis wanted to check for himself. Orvis was indeed close to Lord Phil to verify this, as he had the ability to see if someone is a demon or not. At that moment, as Orvis gets closer to Lord Phil, his equipment starts to shine. That was a sacred relic that could identify if a demon is disguised as a human or not. They then identified that the Lord is indeed a demon. At this moment, a huge explosion occurs in the city, which immediately catches the attention of Marnak and Priest Cornu. A huge demon has just appeared at that moment. Marnak, looking out of the guild, becomes worried to see that, as he feared it might happen. Near the demon, Orvis grabs his hammer and starts gathering a huge amount of energy, reciting the spell, "Act, Scale of Retribution." Orvis then takes a huge leap and begins to shout, "Die," to the demon, delivering a powerful blow to its head, calling it a filthy creature, and causing a huge explosion of lightning and dust rising everywhere. Cornu, looking from afar, says that glow is the punishment hammer of Priest Orvis. Cornu then points forward and tells Marnak that the sect members are fighting the demon, so Cornu and Marnak need to go help. However, Marnak starts running in the opposite direction, asking Cornu to go ahead, as Marnak needs to do something first, but he'll be right behind everyone. Marnak then arrives abruptly, opening the guild door and calling for Aaron. Aaron, desperate, asks what exactly was happening outside and what all those explosions were. Marnak doesn't pay attention to what she's saying and just asks where it is. Aaron, completely confused, asks where is what. Marnak then immediately picks Aaron up in his arms and yells, asking where the medical center where Pierre is recovering is located. Marnak urgently needs to know where to find him. Marnak then goes outside the guild, stomps on the ground, and takes a huge leap, carrying Aaron with him in his arms. Marnak then falls back to the ground and starts running at full speed ahead. Aaron in his arms starts to hear several people screaming for help. All the citizens were running in panic, as right ahead was the huge demon battling against Orvis. Aaron starts to get desperate, asking Marnak to calm down, as there was a monster right in front of them. Marnak shouts at her not to worry about that and to tell him where Pierre is hospitalized. Aaron then points in a direction, saying that Pierre is in that direction. Marnak then runs to the location and immediately opens the door. He finds Pierre lying in a bed, all bandaged up. Pierre was fine, just resting. Aaron is relieved that nothing happened to him. Marnak then smiles, saying he couldn't let Pierre die in a disaster like that, right after Marnak had saved his life. Priest Marnak then picks up Pierre and puts him on his shoulder. Marnak then asks Aaron to hold on tight to his body, as this time it won't be possible to carry her in his arms because of Pierre. Aaron, embarrassed, says it's okay, then grabs onto Marnak's neck to hold on. Marnak again puts all his momentum into his foot, even breaking the ground, and runs at full speed from there, as the battle was causing huge destruction in the area. Aaron then remembers something and gets Marnak's attention, saying she knows a shortcut there. Marnak asks where this shortcut is, and Aaron points towards a house, saying he just has to go in that direction. They then approach the house at full speed. Aaron continues her explanation, saying that this house has a secret passage that leads to the outskirts of the city of Geese. The only problem is that the door is locked. Marnak then, without worrying about that, crashes into the door, completely destroying it. Aaron is surprised by Marnak's power. Marnak then uses his feet to break all the momentum he had built up. Aaron is frightened to witness all that and sees that, after seeing all that, she is absolutely sure that Priest Marnak is extremely powerful. Aaron then gets off Marnak's body while Marnak explains that if things get worse, she should escape through the passage. Aaron is confused, asking what he's going to do now. Marnak sits Pierre down near the wall and says he needs to go back to help in the battle. Marnak then positions himself to run again, while Aaron keeps calling his name. Marnak runs towards the battle and Aaron doesn't give up trying to call him, but without success. Finally, Marnak arrives at the battle scene and immediately sees someone lying down. Marnak is surprised to see who was there on the ground. It was Cornus, who was extremely injured. Marnak starts shouting desperately, asking him to react. Cornus then looks to the side, asking if it was really Priest Marnak who was there. Marnak, looking at Cornus's condition, realizes that the wounds are very deep. He looks at the huge wound on Cornus's belly and realizes that there is nothing he can do to help. Marnak then starts shouting, asking where the other priests who came with him are. Then, in a low voice, Cornus says that Patina is dead. Marnak, desperate, starts asking Cornus if there is any way to defeat the demon. Cornus then begins to explain that there is another relic they brought to the battle. It is a white sword that Orvis managed to thrust into the demon's head. Cornus said, "It's only possible to defeat him if you take that sword and manage to thrust it directly into the demon's brain." While Marnak listened worriedly to the situation, Cornus, already weak and with his eyes filling with blood, says that only then would the demon definitively die. Cornus then drops his hand to the ground and takes his last breath. Marnak then observes Cornus lifeless. He begins to recite his blessing, saying that he will collect that man. Then, green energy begins to enter the dead body, and after that, Marnak receives a notification saying he obtained 100 divinity. After that, elsewhere, Orvis was screaming frantically in the battle against the demon. He is hitting his hammer with all his might on top of the sword embedded in the demon's head in order to make it go deeper into the demon's brain. The demon then starts screaming in pain while trying to get Orvis off its head. The demon starts swinging from side to side while Orvis holds on firmly on top of the demon. At that moment, Marnak approaches running at full speed and jumps towards the demon, saying that it was his golden opportunity. Marnak then lands on the demon's back, causing a huge explosion. Marnak then says it was the perfect moment while he sees Orvis frantically hitting the sword. All Marnak needed was the white sword. However, at that moment, Marnak feels something strange. He realizes that the demon was starting to spin its body. Marnak starts spinning along and becomes pale-faced, saying he can't believe what was about to happen. The demon then digs its paws into the ground and, screaming, starts spinning its body at full speed. Marnak realizes that it was the death spin, typical of crocodiles, who spin their bodies at full speed. Marnak is then thrown away at high speed and falls to the ground, causing a huge explosion. Marnak lies on the ground all bloodied, while the Mother of Corruption is furious, saying, "Kill, kill!" Marnak then smiles and tells the Mother of Corruption not to worry, as he is fine. The mother of corruption keeps saying, "Kill, kill, kill," and Marnak agrees, saying he knew blessings follow disasters. Marnak then smiles and says it was an interesting turn of events, as he looks to the side and sees that the sacred relic that was in Orvis's possession had fallen right next to Marnak after the demon's death spin. Marnak immediately picks up the relic and brings it to his chest. Content, he tells the mother of corruption that he will give her another sacred relic. His eyes then shine green with the power of the mother of corruption as he holds the sacred relic. He then asks her to please give him a new authority. He then orders to release the seal of the relic. The relic then starts to shine. Marnak, facing so much power, says that it seems that every sacred relic has enough divinity for an authority. The relic then shatters after overflowing with power. It had 11,723 divinities. Marnak then smiles, saying that finally another seal was released. Marnak, still lying down, asks the mother of corruption if she could tell him what changed in him. She only answers, "Kill, kill, kill." Marnak asks if that is true, while the hand of corruption jumps from his chest and walks towards the rubble. Marnak, seeing her react that way, says he was glad that the mother of corruption can support him from such a distant place, but he asks if that, compared to undoing the seal of a sacred relic, wasn't very little. The mother of corruption gets angry, saying, "Kill." Marnak quickly responds that he is happy for her growth and that everything he said was just a joke. The hand of corruption then goes back into Marnak's clothes, while he says that since the two of them are not in the best possible situation, for now, he will stop playing with her. Marnak then lowers his head and recites a prayer. His body begins to overflow with power as he says he offers 10,000 divinities to her. A huge ball of power begins to shine around Marnak as he asks, please, for the mother of corruption to give him an authority. The power around Marnak dissipates little by little. Marnak then finds himself in front of a huge circle of power. He says he now understands what he finally gained. It was the text of corruption. Marnak, seeing that, says that the effects of that authority he just gained were quite simple, but still powerful. He explains that when the text of corruption is activated, dark green metaphysical tattoos will appear all over his body, and after these tattoos appear, they will tremendously amplify his physical capabilities. Marnak, after the whole ritual to receive the authority, tells the mother of corruption that this authority wasn't so bad after all. Marnak even says that this authority will be extremely useful in the situation he finds himself in. Marnak then stands up and says that his crushed legs have finally healed. Marnak looks to the side and can't believe what he sees. First, he spots the sword, and next to it was the body of the priest Orvis. Marnak, surprised, begins to remember when he was thrown off the demon's back by the death spin. Probably at that same moment, Orvis was also thrown, but had his body crushed by the impact. Marnak, looking at the body, asks him to rest in peace. And seeing that lifeless body, Marnak begins to pray to the mother of corruption. Marnak crosses his hands and asks the mother of corruption to collect the body of that dead man in order to take his divinities. Before finishing that, the demon roars fiercely nearby. Marnak then looks back and sees the havoc the demon was wreaking. There were explosions everywhere the demon passed. Marnak finds that situation strange, since those priests who brought the sacred relic that identifies demons are dead, and yet the demon runs around desperate as if it had no control over itself. Marnak then finishes collecting Orvis's body, receiving 1,000 divinity. Marnak, looking at the demon, says he thought demons weren't like beasts that only follow their instincts. Marnak then realizes something. The mother of corruption was trying to tell him something, saying, "Kill, kill." Marnak then gets excited, saying that things are about to get more exciting, and then asks the mother of corruption to hold on to him tightly. Marnak then starts running at full speed towards the demon. Marnak at that moment was under the effect of the text of corruption, with his body full of tattoos and with improved physical abilities. The demon then looks directly at Marnak and is scared to see that person approaching so quickly. Marnak then jumps onto the demon's shoulder. The demon at that moment was out of control, swinging its tail everywhere, causing huge explosions with each destruction it caused, while Marnak ran at full speed towards the demon's head. Soon after, Marnak spots the white sword embedded in the demon's head. After noticing the sword, Marnak starts running even faster. At that moment, Marnak realizes that the demon was tilting its body. Marnak then smiles and realizes that the demon was about to do the death spin once again. Marnak then kicks the demon's back to fall towards the ground. He starts descending the demon's body at full speed while smiling, saying that he was already expecting the demon to do exactly that. Marnak then finally lands on the ground after jumping off the demon. At that moment, The demon starts performing its death spin, while Marnak was already waiting to see that move. Marnak then starts running at full speed, while being chased by the demon's death spin. Marnak is confident this time, saying that it wouldn't work twice. That fight was causing huge explosions throughout the city. All the houses around were exploding because of the demon's destruction. All the windows of the houses were breaking one by one. At that moment, Marnak puts his hand to his mouth and starts coughing blood. He then looks at his hand full of blood and says he now understands how quickly the side effects were progressing. The demon at that moment was frantic, destroying everything around without being able to control itself. Marnak then gathers momentum again while beginning to think that, apparently, the side effect of the text of corruption is that Marnak's body starts to decay from the inside out. Marnak then, at full speed, starts to jump several times until reaching the demon, while still thinking that if the demon continues to resist for too long, prolonging that battle, the text of corruption will leak out of Marnak's body, and if that happens, he will be finished. Marnak finally reaches the demon's head and quickly spots the white sword embedded in the demon's head. Marnak then grabs the sword and starts to remember Priest Cornus's instructions, who had said that the white sword inserted in the demon's head would only kill the demon if it was plunged into the demon's brain. Marnak then firmly holds the sword, still remembering that he just had to drive it deeper for the demon to die instantly. Marnak then smiles and removes the sword from the demon's head instead of plunging it deeper. Enormous energy overflows from the demon's wound where the sword was embedded, and Marnak simply asks for Lord Phil to finally awaken. The demon's eyes change completely to blue. Not only its eyes, but its whole body starts to disappear little by little, as if it were dissolving. A huge blue light starts to emanate from the demon's body. Several villagers begin to see that strong light even kilometers away from the location, including Aaron, who spotted that strong blue light while taking care of Pierre. Back at the battle site, the Lord was lying on the ground, covered in blood, missing a leg and an arm. Marnak then approaches and smiles, asking if the Lord is awake. The Lord is also smiling at that moment. The Lord then turns and says that meeting Marnak was the greatest blessing that happened in his life. Marnak, embarrassed, says that such praise was not necessary, and he also comments that the real problem was that the white sword was suppressing the Lord's mind, making him lose control. Marnak then extends his hand, saying that now he wanted 2 gold coins for that feat. The Lord, still injured, just laughs, grabs Marnak's hand and says that without a doubt, what Marnak did was worth much more than that. Now, in another moment and another place, the blue-haired priestess is using a blue fireball in her hand. The fire then falls on the snow, causing the entire area to catch fire, melting all the snow. The guard accompanying her says he already imagined while watching that fire burn all the snow but not causing damage to the plants. The guard says that whenever he sees it, he can hardly believe the size of the power of that authority. He could burn everything without difficulties, preserving what the priestess wanted. The guard is worried, saying that there are no bodies in the area, but he is absolutely sure that he decapitated that boy right there. He then remembers the moment of the decapitation and says that only some monster or animal could have carried the boy's body away from there. The blue-haired priestess says that indeed that was possible to have happened. The priestess still says she thanks the soldier for showing the way, but there was one more thing she would like to ask. The soldier stares at her. The priestess then calmly asks if he could inform her of the names of the nearest cities to that location. Now back to the city of Gois. Much of the city is still destroyed. At that moment, Marnak is walking through the city accompanied by Lord Phil's butler. The butler then opens the mansion's door and asks Marnak kindly to come in. Marnak then smiles and enters the mansion. Marnak is welcomed by Lord Phil, who was extremely happy for Marnak's arrival and said he couldn't wait for him to arrive. The Lord still jokes, saying that every time he sees Marnak, he is always more handsome. Marnak gives a slight embarrassed smile, saying thank you for the compliment. The Lord, pleased, calls Marnak our demon slayer, and says he can't express the gratitude he has for him. Marnak then asks, "But isn't the demon alive and breathing now?" Lord Phil then responds that demons like him also need to live, and that he didn't believe that there is any life born to die. "Or is there?" asked the Lord. Marnak then smiles, saying that the Lord wasn't wrong. Marnak still thinks that after everything that happened with the demon, and even the probable victory over it, the Lord spread the word in the city that Marnak was the one responsible for eliminating the powerful demon that had appeared, and that besides defeating the demon, he also saved Lord Phil. All the citizens were amazed by this news and nicknamed Marnak Demon Slayer, after hearing this proclamation from the Lord. In addition, Erin also didn't stop calling Marnak by this nickname, especially if she was in public, making him even more attention from people. Now people simply called him the famous Demon Slayer, and with that, they kept embarrassing Marnak. People now surrounded Marnak saying that he was extremely powerful, despite not looking like it, and that besides all this, Marnak managed to take care of 7 bandits alone during an expedition. Everyone kept praising Marnak while he tried to escape the crowd, as it wasn't his style. Marnak then sits down to talk to the Lord and says that he was puzzled by one thing, which was strange to see those wooden prostheses of the Lord's arms and legs moving so easily. The Lord then says that he only does that in front of Marnak, but usually when he is surrounded by people, he limps around as if he were very hurt. Now, for him to move naturally, as Marnak mentioned, the Lord says he needs to pay a great price, saying this with a dreadful look. Marnak gets worried, wondering what that meant, and asks what price he is talking about. The Lord then picks up his teacup while laughing and says that sooner or later the Lord's hair will start to lose strength and fall like leaves in autumn. The Lord says this so naturally. The Lord then says that if Marnak finds him in a few months, he will certainly see the Lord bald. Marnak starts to cry for the absurdities he was hearing from the Lord. The Lord then says they can talk about this later, and asks if Marnak has any free time at that moment. Marnak, embarrassed, says that time is what he has the most. The Lord then puts his cup on the table, crosses his hands, and says that moment was perfect, since the Lord received a job in which the requester specifically asked for Marnak to do it. Marnak is confused about what it could be and asks what this job would be. The Lord then, with a suspicious smile, says that apparently these people thought Marnak would be perfect for the job after hearing the stories about the Demon Slayer, and apparently it is related to the sacred relics of the ancient empire. Marnak is surprised to hear this story, besides learning that the reward for completing it will be 5 gold coins. The Lord then still clarifies that the payment will be made in advance, and they are still saying that if the exploration of the ruins is extremely satisfactory, they will give Marnak one of the relics found on the mission. The Mother of Corruption gets excited to hear all this conversation and tries to communicate with Marnak, saying, "Kill! Kill!" Marnak agrees with the Mother of Corruption, saying that it is much more advantageous for him to explore this place on his own, since it is full of sacred relics. Marnak then stands up happily and tells the Lord that he accepts this mission. Marnak then begins to explain in his head that a long time ago there was an ancient empire, and they ended the era of disturbed mages and unified the entire continent. And in this current era, where their technology was recreated, those sacred relics are known as precious treasures, which contain powerful abilities. Marnak then says that in other words, most of the items considered high rank in that world are actually relics of the ancient empire. Marnak walks to the city gate where a group was waiting for him. Marnak arrives and introduces himself, saying that he is a priest of the Order of the Goddess of Preservation, and his name is Marnak. A member of this group extends his hand, saying that he was the one who asked for Marnak's help, and that his name is Carmen Valtis. Marnak is surprised to hear this surname, wondering if it is really Valtis. Carmen then realizes that Marnak became uneasy upon hearing his surname, and says that Marnak's thought is correct, that Anthony Valtis, of the Black Wolves, is his father.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and like the video. Thank you.